Chapter 3 Bound Together. The wheels turned, and with them, so did the world. Cobblestone gave way to packed dirt, and stone walls fell behind us like closing doors. The noise of the city, hammers, hawkers, and the endless rattle of life faded until even the echoes were gone. In their place came wind, low and cold, the kind that slips beneath armor and finds a soft spot beneath your ribs. I shifted in my seat, feeling the rough jolt of the wagon in my bones. My snowbook lay against my side, its battered leather warm from the touch of my hand. Above us, the sun stretched thin fingers across a wide, pale sky. After so many days in darkness, the light felt almost like a blessing. Almost. There was a stubborn part of me that wanted to close my eyes and simply breathe, to savor the open air, the living world, and the familiar weight of my magic tucked close once more. But the feeling wouldn't stay, not with the road bending away into uncertainty. The further we went, the wilder the land became. Trees rose like sentries, their bare limbs clawing at the pale morning sky. The hills rolled darker, furrowed, and deep, beyond civilization's touch. Just endless wilderness and the steady creak of wood and chain. It settled in then. The truth. We were being taken somewhere we would not be seen again. No trial, no voice, just labor and darkness. The mines. You could feel it in the way the others sat, stiffer now, still, listening not to the guards outside, but to the thrum of panic building beneath their own skin. It was Ryu who spoke first, a whisper, barely above a breath. "We can't let them take us there." Jasper nodded without looking up. "Once you're in, you're gone. Might as well chisel your name in the rock and call it home." I glanced at Tara. Her jaw was clenched, her fingers digging into the grain of the bench. Thorak's fists were balled so tight his knuckles had gone white. I held my book gently, the familiar weight of it grounding me. "Then we need to get out, before the horizon turns to stone." No one spoke for a moment, but it wasn't resistance. It was agreement. Heavy, terrified agreement. Tara broke the silence. "They rotate the guards every half hour. I've been watching. That's when they get lazy." "I could take a fit," Thorak offered. "Seizure, maybe?" Ryu's gaze was steady. "A distraction is good, but we need a second move. Someone near the door to grab the keys." All eyes turned to me. "Don't look at me," I said. "I've got magic, not reach. Though, with the right incantation, I could probably make his belt burst into flames." Tara raised an eyebrow. Tempting, but noisy. I capped the bench, thinking, what about a pull and pass? Thorak fakes a fit, one of us calls the guard for help, and when he leans in, Jasper grabs the keys. Thorak cracked his neck. "Can do." "I'll keep watch on the others," Ryu said. "If one gets suspicious, I can draw the eye." Tara nodded. We do it at the next rotation. We met each other's eyes, a ragged circle of prisoners and fools, bound not by promises, but by the sheer stubborn need to survive. It was enough. The wagon bumped on, the shadows of trees crawling across our faces like fingers reaching in. And somewhere ahead, the mines waited. But maybe we wouldn't beat them. Maybe, for once, the stone wouldn't have the final say. We waited for the next location. You could feel the tension build like pressure behind a dam. One false move, and the whole thing would bust. The guards rode in stagger formation around the wagons. As expected, one of them peeled close, trotting lazily beside us, half watching the tree line, half bored with his own existence. Thorak slumped forward. It was a subtle thing, but effective. His shoulders rolled, head lolling. Then he pitched sideways with a rasping cough that sounded far too convincing. The guard shifted in his saddle, scowling. "Oi! What's wrong with him?" Jasper was on his feet in an instant, all concern and fluster. I think he's choking, or seizing, or both. Gods, he's twitching. Look, he's foaming." Thorak gave a particularly dramatic spasm and let out a noise that could have been pain or indigestion. The guard leaned in warily, gripping the bars. "Back up, halfling. Let me see." Jasper darted close, quick as a shadow, his hands slipping through the bars. Then he froze. His fingers hovered near the guard's belt, just shy of the buckle. Nothing. No keys. His eyes widened, just a flicker, and he gave the smallest, most imperceptible shake of his head. I held my breath. Thorak, to his credit, caught the sign and was already shifting gears. With a lurch, he threw out an arm and smacked the guard square in the chest. Not hard enough to injure, but enough to stagger him back a step. "Gotcha," he said with a raspy grin. "Just having a bit of fun, lad." The guard snarled. "You call that fun, you stone-headed? Is there a problem?" Came a voice like frost cracking bone. Every sound died at once. Marshal Kane rode up slowly, black armor clicking with every breath of his horse. His eyes were ice cold, like punishment pre-carved in stone. "If I hear one more disturbance from this wagon," he said, calm as a noose, "I will drag them into the trees myself. You know what happens to those who cause trouble on the way to the mines." The guard stiffened, saluting with a nervous nod. Yes, sir, yes, sir." Kane turned his gaze on us. "All of you," he said. "This is your last warning. I'm not interested in your names or your excuses. If you become a problem, I won't solve it, I'll end it." His horse stamped once, restless. "We'll be crossing into the Whispering Woods soon," he said to the guard. "Double the patrols, eyes up. If we lose anyone in there, we don't go looking." He turned his horse with surgical grace and rode on ahead, his cloak trailing like a shadow trying to keep up. I looked at the trees ahead, tall and dark, swaying though there was no wind. We rode in silence for a while, letting time pass the way it does when you're in chains. Too fast to savor, too slow to escape. The sun rose higher, though its light seemed paler now. The trees grew closer, thicker, pressing in on either side of the road like silent spectators. The wild crept in with every mile, the kind of wild that doesn't welcome visitors. None of us spoke much after the failed attempt. Even Jasper, usually a font of fidgeting and muttered jokes, sat with his hands folded and eyes distant. Thorak rubbed his jaw like he was grinding down stone in the back of his teeth. Tara hadn't shifted from her spot by the bars, staring out with that same carved stone stillness. And Ryu, he seemed almost smaller, drawn inward, like a tide pulled back before a wave. We hadn't given up, but hope now rode quietly, hooded and unarmored. It was midday when we saw them. The trees. The real trees. The woods we'd been running through were just the edge. Feral, but calming. The Whispering Woods were something else. Something older. The first of the trees loomed like a monolith, wide as a barn door, bark twisted in spirals that looked too deliberate to be natural. Beyond it, shadows stretched deep into the undergrowth, even as the sun still clung to the sky. Vines draped from high branches like curtains, moss-coated stone and root alike. It didn't feel like entering a forest. It felt like being swallowed. And that's when it started. The whispers. Faint at first, barely more than breath through leaves. You could see the guards twitching, their eyes darting from one another, jaws tight. One made a warding gesture, quick fingers moving from his heart to his temple when he thought no one was looking. Most folks called it superstition. They said the name Whispering Woods came from the wind, or the way the birdsong vanished when he crossed the threshold. But I knew better. The Whispering Woods was a bad name. To those without sight, it was a whisper, a trick of the wind, the hush of branches shifting overhead. But to those who knew the true shape of the world, and could see its edges and feel its threads, this place didn't whisper. It screamed. The arcane hum here was thick as honey, and just as cloying. Layers of old magic, wild and buried, pressed close on every side. Most places hum with life, This one pulsed, like a heartbeat beneath the soil, like the low moan of something ancient and dreaming, far too close to wake it. The weave here was tangled, knotted, snarled, and alive in ways that made my heart race. Most folks shivered as you crossed the border into the trees. Even the guards, armored and full of steel-backed confidence, rode a little tighter in the saddle. The wind moved strangely here, and the light filtered down in odd ways, green and gold one moment, cold and gray the next. But me, I felt something else. Not comfort exactly, but familiarity. The woods were wild, yes, untamed, touched by old magic and stranger things, but they felt more like home than any stone hall or mountain keep ever had. There's a tired old story, one everyone's heard and most believed, that dwarves live in mountains, deep places, under the world, in halls carved from the bones of the earth. And sure, there are still proud clans who call the peaks home, who hold to the old ways in the deeper darks. But the truth is, more dwarfs live above ground now than beneath it, in cities, in towns, in the clustered corners of human sprawl, or the edges of elven groves. We've changed, as the world has changed. I'd only been to the ancestral Ironvein home once, as a child. I remember it vaguely. Great columns and echoing chambers, stonework that sang when the wind passed through it. But it wasn't mine. Not really. My world has always been green. I grew up in the forest, not a highland thicket or a hunting glade, but a proper, living forest, deep and wet and wild with life. The air there was thick with humidity, like it had weight, like you had to earn your breath with every step. And the things that lived there thrived. Trees climbed high enough to whisper to clouds, ferns unfurled like flags, vines tangled with such vigor you'd think they were alive. Fruit hung heavy on branches, and beasts moved in the shadow and sunlight, free and unbothered by the affairs of dwarves or kings. That forest was my hearth, its canopy my roof, its trails my first spellbook. It's where I learned to watch, to listen, to know the rhythm of the place, not because it was carved in stone, but because it changed with every season and every storm. So yes, there was magic here in the Whispering Woods, wild and unsettling, but it didn't scare me. Instead, they called something in me, making me feel alive and restless.